There was a time, not so long ago, when the world's most populous nation was not a symbol of wealth and power, but a land of hunger and struggle. In 1978, China was poorer than Nigeria, Chad, Malawi, and Cameroon. Today, that story has been forgotten by many, but history remembers. This is Voices of the Forgotten, where Africa's lost stories rise again. The year is 1978. In the heart of Africa, the sun rises over the bustling city of Lagos. The streets are alive with the sound of commerce, market women calling out their wares, taxis honking, children laughing as they run to school. Nigeria is a land of promise, its oil fields pumping black gold, its people dreaming of a future as bright as the morning sun. Across the continent in Chad, the markets of N'Djamena are filled with traders selling cattle, cotton, and salt. In Malawi, the fields around Lilongwe are green and lush, the lakes teeming with fish. In Cameroon, the air in Yaoundé is thick with cocoa and coffee, the mountains standing watch over a land rich in resources. In these years, Africa's future seemed limitless. Nigeria's GDP per capita was nearly double that of China. Chad, Malawi, and Cameroon, countries that today are often spoken of in terms of poverty, were, at that time, ahead of the world's sleeping giant. But far to the east, in the villages of China, life was a daily struggle. The Cultural Revolution had left scars across the land. Families gathered around small bowls of rice, rationed and precious. The world saw China as a nation of 1 billion hungry souls, its cities gray and silent, its countryside battered by decades of war and political upheaval. In 1978, China's GDP per capita was less than $200. Nigeria's was almost $500. Chad, Malawi, and Cameroon were not far behind. The numbers told a story that few could have imagined today. Africa was rich and China was poor. But history is not a straight line. It is a river, winding and unpredictable. The promise of Africa. Nigeria in the late 1970s was a nation on the rise. Oil had transformed the economy. The streets of Lagos were filled with new cars, the skyline dotted with cranes and new buildings. The government invested in universities, hospitals, and infrastructure. There was a sense of optimism, a belief that Nigeria could become the giant of Africa, a leader on the world stage. Chad, too, was a land of hope. Its cattle and cotton brought wealth to the markets. The rivers provided water for crops, and the people looked to the future with confidence. Chad's capital, N'Djamena, was a crossroads for traders from the Sahara and the Savannah, a place where fortunes could be made. Malawi, known as the warm heart of Africa, was peaceful and fertile. Its lakes were full of fish, its fields green with maize and tobacco. The people worked the land with pride, and the country was seen as a model of stability. In the villages, families gathered for meals of nsima and fish, and children played by the shores of Lake Malawi. In Cameroon, with its rich soil and diverse cultures, was called Africa in miniature. Its cocoa and coffee were prized around the world. The government invested in education and health, and the people believed in the promise of independence. From the rainforests of the south to the grasslands of the north, Cameroon was a land of opportunity. In these countries, the future seemed bright. leaders spoke of progress and unity. There was a sense that Africa's time had come. China's struggle. Meanwhile, in China, the story was very different. The country had endured decades of turmoil, civil war, Japanese invasion, the Great Leap Forward, and the Cultural Revolution. By the late 1970s, the economy was in ruins, factories were outdated, farms were inefficient, and millions lived in poverty. In rural China, families survived on little more than rice and vegetables. Many children went barefoot, and schools were often little more than mud huts. The government controlled every aspect of life, and innovation was stifled by fear and suspicion. But in 1978, something changed. Deng Xiaoping, a leader who had survived purges and exile, took power. He saw that China could not continue on its old path. The world was changing, and China needed to change with it. Deng introduced a series of reforms that would transform the country. He opened the doors to foreign investment, allowed private businesses to grow, and encouraged innovation. The government invested in education, infrastructure, and technology. The people were given new freedoms to work, to trade, and to dream. Factories began to rise where rice paddies once stood. Cities grew from dust. The world watched as China began its long journey from poverty to power.
The turning point. Back in Africa, the promise of the 1970s began to fade. Oil, once a blessing, became a curse for Nigeria. Corruption spread through the government. Money meant for schools and hospitals disappeared into the pockets of politicians. The roads crumbled, the power failed, and the people grew restless. In Chad, civil war broke out. The wealth from cattle and cotton was lost to conflict. The rivers dried up and the markets emptied. Political instability and drought made life harder for ordinary people. Malawi faced drought and disease. The government struggled to provide for its people. The fields that once fed the nation became barren. International aid became a lifeline, but it could not replace the lost promise of self-sufficiency. Cameroon, too, faced challenges. Political divisions grew and the promise of unity faded. The cocoa and coffee that once brought wealth could not keep up with the needs of a growing population. Corruption and mismanagement slowed progress, and the gap between rich and poor widened. China's rise. As Africa struggled, China soared. The reforms of Deng Xiaoping unleashed a wave of growth. The country became the world's factory, producing everything from toys to electronics. Millions were lifted out of poverty. Cities like Shanghai and Shenzhen became symbols of modernity and progress. China invested in infrastructure, roads, railways, airports, and ports. The government focused on education and technology, building a skilled workforce ready for the challenges of the new century. Special economic zones attracted foreign companies and exports boomed. By the 2000s, China's GDP per capita had surpassed that of Nigeria, Chad, Malawi, and Cameroon. The world watched in awe as the sleeping dragon awoke. China's cities filled with skyscrapers and its people traveled the world. The country became a global superpower. Its influence felt in every corner of the globe. What changed? The story of these nations is a lesson in leadership, vision, and the power of collective action. China's rise was not inevitable. It was the result of bold decisions, hard work, and a willingness to adapt. The government set clear goals, invested in people, and created an environment where businesses could thrive. Africa's struggles were not inevitable either. The promise of the 1970s was lost to corruption, conflict, and missed opportunities. The riches of the land were not enough to guarantee prosperity. It was the choices of leaders, the strength of institutions, and the unity of the people that made the difference. China's leaders focused on long-term planning, education, and industrialization. They encouraged innovation and welcomed foreign investment. In contrast, many African countries were held back by short-term thinking, political instability, and a reliance on natural resources. The present day. Today, China is one of the world's wealthiest nations. Its cities are filled with skyscrapers, its people travel the world, and its influence is felt in every corner of the globe. Nigeria, Chad, Malawi, and Cameroon still face challenges, but their stories are not over. The rivers still flow, the fields still grow, and the people still dream. There are signs of hope, young entrepreneurs, new investments, and a growing awareness of the need for good governance and innovation. In Lagos, new tech hubs are rising. In Malawi, farmers are adopting new methods to increase yields. In Cameroon, young people are demanding change. In Chad, efforts are being made to restore peace and stability. Lessons for the future. History teaches us that no nation's fate is fixed. The river of fortune can change its course. With vision, unity, and wise leadership, any country can rise again. The story of China shows what is possible when a nation invests in its people, embraces change, and works together for a common goal. Africa's future is unwritten. The challenges are great, but so is the potential. The lessons of the past can guide the way forward. With determination, innovation, and unity, the promise of the 1970s can be reclaimed. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think Africa can learn from China's journey? What do you believe is the true wealth of a nation? Subscribe to Voices of the Forgotten for more stories that history tried to bury but we bring back to life.